we should get started. So welcome everybody to your Rediscovering Rest session. I am so excited today to have Jonny Khan from the Lego Group with us. We recently worked together with Jonny's team at Lego on exactly this topic. So today we're really going to bring what we explored about the 7 types of rest, how we can use that to feel more energized, to increase the performance of ourselves and our teams. So yes, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us, Jonny. So before we dive in,
I'm struggling to unmute. Just say, yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, okay, great. And before we dive in, Jonny, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your role at Lego and what a typical day looks like for you and your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So I work in a strategy role at the Lego Group. My role predominantly focuses on Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. But then there are sort of global elements, global strategy projects that I work on as well. I've typically always worked in strategy or operations roles, came originally from consulting and have sort of worked in other sort of consumer and some sort of tech businesses as well. And have been working at the Lego Group for 7-8 months or something like that now. But yeah, really enjoying it here. So what our sort of typical day looks like, and everyone sort of works. So I'm just thinking about the strategy team here at Lego, and there's about 40 of us. Everyone works very differently. What I would say is it's not like super long hours. I think a lot of us came from consulting where you're working those 60+ hour weeks. It's definitely not that. But it's definitely everyone works hard during the day and it's pretty intense in the day. But the hours are sort of pretty manageable. The work itself, very much, you could kind of relate it to most sort of corporate roles. You've got a bunch of meetings. Usually there's quite a lot of presentations, particularly in the strategy role, frequently presenting to quite senior people in the business. Then there's always, you're creating materials that are going to be presented or working with a team or conducting analysis. So very sort of like, office-based sort of corporate tasks. And then there's probably, depending on your role, there's travel. So my role, because I'm based here in London, but travel out to the Eastern Europe and Middle East quite a bit. So there's that element to it as well. But overall, it's sort of, I mean, the Lego Group is a great place to work. So it's we work hard and intense, but it's pretty manageable and it's sort of nice teams. So we kind of have a great starting point for building on the learnings that you have around rediscovering rest. I think people that work at the Lego Group, that's a perfect sort of starting point for the learnings that you were able to bring to us.
Yeah, oh, amazing. Thanks, Jonny. So really, this rest is my absolute favorite topic to talk about. And that is because I have studied rest. I studied rest because I did not know how to rest. And for those of you that I haven't met before, my name is Hannah. I'm the founder of I Am Pausing. I launched this business 3 years ago, and our mission is to change the way, redefine workplace well-being, so that we can live more fulfilled, happier lives inside and outside of work. And before this, I spent 15 years scaling software businesses in the US and in the UK, and I personally went through multiple different burnouts over those 15 years. And so hence my own personal interest in this topic, after having really done a deep dive and a bunch of research from the leading voices in neuroscience, in medical science, in well-being and holistic modalities. So hopefully in this session, you're going to learn something that you can implement in your personal life or in your working life as well. And before we dive in, I'm gonna share my screen in a second and we'll dive in. But before we do that, Jonny, so I worked with Jonny late last year with the Lego group. Jonny asked if we could come in and do a session, a well-being session. And so I wondered, Jonny, can you just give us a little bit of a taster in terms of what drew you to the idea of rest as a performance enhancer, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think where the starting place we had, so we were organizing. It was a December offsite, and we were thinking, how can we add something in here about well-being, or how can we include something about enhancing your performance? We felt there was something we could do like personally for us. So we were looking at what we wanted to do here. And you came recommended from an ex-colleague of mine who said you'd run a great session with them. So that's how we sort of came in contact. I'll admit up front, I think I initially had some skepticism about rest, and I thought rest was about sort of getting enough sleep and avoiding burnout. That it was on that end of the spectrum that I was looking at things. But then after we spoke and I read some of your work, I realized there was actually a huge amount more to it. Like the first thing was like, it's not just about sleep. And I thought like personally, okay, I can manage my own sleep and that's kind of fine. And that's probably doable. But there was so much more about it. And there was these multiple types of rest that you're going to go through later. And then secondly, the part about avoiding burnouts, like obviously really important and something we should all pay attention to, but that's like one end of the spectrum. And at the Lego group, we don't typically, I mean, I don't speak too generally, but like that's not been typically, from my experience being here, haven't seen that too much as an issue. It's not like we're, like I said, the consulting firms where we've all worked before 60 plus hours, where you do see people burning out, or people who worked at come out unnamed companies, but you can imagine some of the very fast growing tech companies, which maybe doesn't have quite the right culture at times. There you see people burning out. You hear about that all the time. At the Lego group, I don't think we really have that problem. I'm sure there are individual cases, but not like holistic problem for the whole group. However, what we kind of found was, well, after reading your work, was there was huge upsides in managing your rest to take you from like average performance to good performance, or from good performance to great performance. And it was like in your work. It was also if you were just thinking about spending time with your family, playing sports, doing hobbies. So it was learning about that, and actually how can I take myself from good to average to good, or good to great. That was the part that I think really resonated with my colleagues at the Lego group. And me personally, sort of, I feel like I'm a convert now. I kind of feel I've learned more about rest. I think I understand more about it, particularly the science behind it. And I'm a real enthusiast of it now.
I love that you brought that in, because rest is not just about avoiding burnout. And we're going to go into that now. So I'm just going to share the screen here. And yes, please do feel free to use the chat, everyone, or raise a hand if you have a question. I'm actually going to ask you a question in a minute, which you will need to answer in the chat if you feel up to it. So yeah, let's dive in. So as I introduced myself before, I'm Hannah, the founder of I Am Pausing. If you would like to know more about us, you can scan this QR code. That will drop you on our mailing list, and follow along on Instagram as well. Really, the philosophy behind pausing is that there are 3 ways to pause. Mini pauses are these 5-10 minute activities that we need every day. It could be a very short breathwork, meditation, sitting down with a cup of tea. Medium pauses is what we're doing right now. So we're stepping away for 40 minutes from our day-to-day to step back and think about our well-being. And the third way to pause is an immersive pause. And that is like a retreat style. We need these in our quarters, in our halves, to really rest. So this is the framework for pausing. And in terms of the rest of this session, for the next 15 minutes, we're going to go through the 7 kinds of rest that exists. And Jonny's going to contribute with his experience of implementing this at the Lego group. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. I'm curious though, for the people that are here live right now, how rested are you? If 1 is, I'm absolutely exhausted, I dragged myself here, or I'm really tired, and 10 is, I feel amazing, my tank is full. Where are we? You can write in the chat a number, just so we can get an idea of this. I'm at about an 8 today. It's been a long day of online meetings, but I did get out for a lovely walk at lunchtime in the sunshine. So yeah, and I can see Sophie's a 4, Jeanette 7, AJ 6, Oranit 5. So we've got a bit of a variety there. Thank you so much for sharing. It's nice to kind of just check in. Where am I at actually? So firstly, why are we talking about rest? To answer that question, we need to look at the body, and specifically the autonomic nervous system. What is that? Well, it's in the name. The nervous system is running automatically in the background 24 hours a day, and its primary goal is our survival. And this was helpful back in the day when we're hunter-gathering through the forest, we spot a saber-toothed tiger and we need to run. So our system goes into that fight or flight, heart rate quickens, palms start to sweat. All of these physiological reactions happen in the body in a split second. And that enables us to stay safe, to get out of danger. But the thing is now, what's happened in our modern day life is this is triggered just from an email from our boss maybe, or a notification on our phone. And so Dr. Dan Siegel coined this window of tolerance. So we all have within us this window, and at the top is this fight or flight, hyperarousal. At the bottom are rest and digest, hypoarousal. And what's happening every single day in every single human being, this is an equalizer, we're all the same in this way, is we wake up in the morning. What's the first thing we do when we wake up? Maybe for many of us, it's we look at our phone, right? That triggers us up to the top of our window. We see all of these things on our agenda that we have to do today. And then what do? We get up, we get dressed, maybe we take the dog out for a morning walk. Then we start to come down to the bottom of our window, start to become a bit more rested. That's a relaxing activity. On the way back from our walk, we stop by our favorite coffee shop, grab an oat latte. That caffeine brings us all the way back up, heart rate starts increasing. And then we get home, we jump on our Teams meeting. There's lots of energy. Again, we're at the top of our window, and so on and so forth for the rest of our day. I'm skipping through this quite fast because this is normally an hour-and-a-half session that we run with teams. But please tell me if you have any questions or if you need me to slow down. The reason why we're talking here about the nervous system and our window of tolerance is because what happens when we're constantly triggering our nervous system into different states is that our window narrows. And if your window gets too narrow at a certain point, that is when you're going to burn out. And not even just burn out, it's when you're not going to feel creative. You're not going to feel energized. And we all know the difference of those days and not perform at your best. So rest is the answer to widening our window so that we can have more capacity for the work, capacity for our family, capacity for joy, to tolerate stress, all of it. And actually, there is a big misconception about rest. If you're anything like me, I used to think that rest was lying horizontal on the sofa, binging Netflix, or sleeping, these sorts of things. That is what I would consider rest. But the problem was, the more I did those things, I was still feeling exhausted. So a lot of us think that sleep is rest. So that was my first port of call. Before studying rest, I studied sleep. All of the supplements, all of the, blackout blinds, eye masks, everything, right? But still, even though sleep is important, sleep is actually only one of the 7 types of rest that exist. And what's happened because of this is that there is, within our organizations, a culture of high achieving, high producing, chronically tired, burnt out individuals. And I could definitely identify with that. I don't know about anyone else. So the 7 types of rest is a framework that's really useful for us to really hone in on how to rest better. As you can see on the screen here, we have the 7 types of rest: physical rest, mental rest, sensory rest, creative rest, emotional rest, social rest, and spiritual rest. We're now going to spend some time going through the 7 types of rest. Before we dive in here, does anyone have any burning questions? Jonny, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, nothing on top of what you said. I mean, I think the 7 types are super interesting, and I found it useful thinking through when we did this exercise originally in December. Where am I doing well and where am I not doing well? And then that helps you kind of create something that's actionable to say, okay, I need to do more of X or more of Y, and actually, but I might be doing okay on this one. So I found that sort of really helpful for myself.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that in. So I'll invite everybody that is listening now, while we're talking through these 7 types of rest, check in with yourself and think, oh yeah, am I doing okay there? Or where may I have a rest deficit? And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to share a quiz with you, which takes about 5-10 minutes. You can do it after the session, and that will actually show you where you have a deficit in terms of the 7 types of rest. So the first kind of rest is physical rest. And this is not just sleep. It is also, there are 2 types of physical rest. So we have passive physical rest, which is sleep, laying down, even if you're not sleeping, lying, resting. Super important, right? Research from Harvard says that 3 days of sleep deprivation gives us the mental capacity equivalent of drinking a bottle of wine, which, we wouldn't go to work after drinking a bottle of wine, but we would go to work most likely after 3 days of sleep deprivation. So yeah, sleep is a whole nother topic, which we also have whole sessions that we run on, so we won't go into it anymore now. But there is another part to physical rest, and that is active physical rest. Can anyone think what a form of active physical rest is? This is especially important for us knowledge workers who may be sitting at our computers or in a meeting room for most of the day, not physically moving our body. AJ, walks in nature. I absolutely love it. Exactly. A slow walk in nature, or yoga, stretching. Sophie, yeah, exactly. On a Monday night, I teach a class called Rest and Restore, and we do restorative yoga. And this is a form of active physical rest. Sometimes when we've been sitting all day, you'll feel exhausted at the end of the day. And maybe you'd be inclined to sit on the sofa like I used to and watch TV. But actually, that's not what your body needs. Your body would be much happier if you were to do a gentle walk or some stretching. Thanks. The second type of rest is mental rest. This is anything that gives your brain a break from thinking and focusing too hard. So it's not just, oh, I'm just going to keep plowing on with work because it's a bank holiday weekend coming up and I'll just do a few more hours now. That is counterintuitive and it's not sustainable. Anyone here a tennis fan? Roger Federer, I'm sure we all know who he is, 20-time Grand Slam champion. His success is not just due to his physical training. It's actually because of his mental mastery. So Federer uses powerful psychological techniques like mindfulness, meditation, and visualization practices to give his mind cutting edge in his recovery and in his training. And the organizations that we work with are using forms of mental rest to do exactly the same. As Jonny said, to have a high-performing culture. Lego is one of the most creative companies that exist, and Jonny's team is the global strategy and innovation team at one of the most creative companies. So yeah, Jonny, maybe you can give us some insight here into how this went down with your team in terms of mental rest.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, sort of, at the Lego Group, we are, it's not too difficult to be creative. We are sort of a creative company, and every meeting room has sort of Lego bricks in it, and that you can play with. So I think we had a good starting point on this one, and I think making sure we have that time out to sort of pause, and it might just be a sort of 5-minute, 10-minute fun activity, or it might be, a break. Okay, I've got a break, you've got a break, and we can go up, to the atrium, and I can just chat with someone, and there's a thing of Lego in the middle, like, bowl of Lego in the middle, and we can just be building, and you're not even consciously thinking about it. You're just chatting away and building, and it's quite. We found that a really nice way to sort of just it giving you that sort of 5-10 minute pause. I think has really helped. And personally, actually, I found in the evenings as well, rather than sitting and watching TV, actually, at the end of a long day, it's Tuesday night, rainy and cold, you sit down in front of Netflix or something, actually sort of building a Lego set or the equivalent. It doesn't have to be the Lego set. I'm just saying that because I'm from Lego Group. But, it could be drawing a picture, doing a puzzle, whatever it is, or whatever it is that works for you. But something that kind of gives you that nice pause, I found personally has worked really well as well.
Yeah, I love that. I need to get myself some Lego and do that in all my meetings. So yes, there's many different forms of ways to get mental rest. My favorite form of mental rest is using the breath. So we don't have time to do it today, but when we delivered this session to Lego, we got everyone to do a 5-10 minute breathwork exercise. This is what the Navy SEALs use. They use box breath. The breath accesses directly the nervous system. So it can just shift our state in just a matter of a minute. So that's one of my favorite forms of mental rest. The third form of rest is sensory rest. In our modern day world, we are looking at bright lights, screens, background noise. Those of you in London will recognise this. This is London Bridge. This gentleman is on the phone. There's traffic noise. This is what we're dealing with all day, every day, an overwhelm of our senses. So getting sensory rest is really important. And there are different ways that we can do this. We all know that we spend way too much time on our phones, but the statistics are quite depressing. 70 days a year on our phones. So making sure that we have time to unplug. Personally, my phone gets plugged in the kitchen in the evening at 10 p.m. and I don't look at it until I've woken up the next day. That gives me a good chunk of time where I'm not using a bright light, I'm not looking at a screen. Other ways to get sensory rest could be taking a bubble bath, using essential oils, getting a massage. There are many ways to get sensory rest, even listening to white noise or pink noise and using a blindfold. Just really, it doesn't have to be depriving your senses, it can also be stimulating your senses. The fourth form of rest is creative rest. Yes, AJ, you have a question, please.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much. I know this is great already, and definitely resonate with not knowing how to rest well. So really appreciate this. The sensory one, I'm slightly confused by. My thoughts are like a sort of digital free time, but then I thought about, okay, if I'm reading my book, does that also count as stimuli? Because it's generally I read non-fiction, work-focused, self-improvement, performance type books. And so like, does that count as sensory rest?
Yeah, so probably not, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using the focus of your eyes on the page. If you find it, and the thing to say with this is there's no right or wrong. It's more to get us to think about how we rest. And it varies person to person. But I would just check in with yourself next time you take a break and read. Is that giving you mental rest? Is that giving you sensory rest? Sensory rest can be a very quick one, so a mini pause. So it might be one of my favorite things to do is I normally have essential oil at my desk. I would put a little bit of lavender oil on my hands, sit down, take 5 or 10 deep breaths and close my eyes. You're depriving your sense of sight and you are invigorating your sense of smell. It could be listening to classical music or, just to relax us, or a certain frequency of sound that is really relaxing. So I would say it's, or a bubble bath, feeling the heat on your skin, rubbing oil into your skin at the end of the day after a shower. These sorts of things is how we can come back into our senses after them being overwhelmed for the day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the question. Creative rest. It's really hard to feel creative when we're tired. And really, sorry, just trying to change the slide. Here we go. Many of our offices, hopefully not, but many offices I do see look like this. It's not exactly a breeding ground for creativity and innovation. I know at Lego they have like the giant Lego tree, which really creative rest is about coming back to that sense of awe. And my favorite form of creative rest is getting out into nature. This also, some of these check multiple boxes, right? Getting into nature, unplugging from our devices, feeling the light, dewy mist on the leaves. this is also sensory rest and mental rest. So I won't go into this study. I'm going to share it with you because I'm aware of time, but there's many studies that show that spending just short amounts of time in nature, even if it's a park in a city, like a small green space, will decrease our levels of stress and increase our creativity. The fifth kind of rest is emotional rest. This is taking time to feel and express our feelings. So every day events happen in our lives, personal and at work. It could be a difficult conversation that you have to have with someone, or whatever it may be. And these things can get shoved down because it's not always appropriate or the right time for us to feel those emotions. And what happens if you keep pushing things down, eventually they're going to come up in more of a sense of overwhelm. This was definitely my experience, my main burnout that I had when I was in my late 20s working in New York, very long hours. I just arrived into the office one day and broke down in tears and had no idea why, and then couldn't get out of bed for a week. It was my my body saying we haven't had space to feel, to process. And I love this quote, this book I highly recommend, The Body Keeps the Score. Neuroscience research shows the only way we can change the way we feel is becoming aware of how we actually feel, of what's going on inside of us. So we can get emotional rest in various ways. Journaling is an amazing practice. Coaching, talking to a friend or colleague, therapy, making sure that we are taking care of ourselves and also our teams, and making sure that they have these resources available to them. The sixth form of rest is social rest. This is a funny one because in my journey, when I was exhausted, the last thing that I wanted to do was go to dinner with my friends. I would recluse myself. But actually, that for me was counterintuitive and made me feel even more exhausted and isolated. So really, social rest is about checking in with ourselves, who in our lives gives us energy and we feel lighter and inspired after being with them, and who after spending time with them do we just feel drained and exhausted. We've all experienced those people. So it's about making sure that you have enough time alone and also enough time with positive people. The final form of rest is spiritual rest. And this is about finding a feeling of belonging so that we can feel rested and perform at our best. So there's many different ways. It could be volunteering at a local organization in the community. For me, it will be prayer, meditation, devotion, a religion, but life gets tough and we need a sense of faith in something. So yeah, making sure that we're making time for spiritual rest, however that looks for us. So to recap, these are the 7 forms of rest. Jonny, what else would you like to bring in that kind of stood out when we implemented these 7 forms of rest within the Lego group?
Yeah, it was just getting the 7, almost just getting the list and understanding where am I doing well and where I'm not doing so well was super helpful. I think some of the things that really stood out to me, one was the social rest. I think for a work setting, that's making sure, we're all busy, but making sure we have that time together as a team, making sure we're going, having lunch together, or it's going out after work or having sort of social activities together. And I think, like you say, when you're busy, that's the thing you sort of look to cut, but actually is very, but that's counterintuitive, and you're going to be less productive as a result. So actually making sure you have that time to socialize with your colleagues, or socialize sort of, outside of work with friends, and sort of not deprioritizing that. I found that super helpful. And I kind of, when you said that before, I kind of reflected on times when, yeah, you do cut social activities and actually how that is counterproductive. And then when you do prioritize them, you actually come back reinvigorated. And even last night, I was feeling a bit tired, and was almost missed football with some friends, and decided to go still because I committed to it, and came back really full of energy, and then I think sort of really helped me out. So I kind of even experienced that yesterday. I think the other one that I found really interesting was the spiritual rest. I think when we first talked about it, I thought that was a bit fluffy, I felt. And this is, I guess, more of a personal reflection than a professional work reflection. But I had recently stopped coaching so I coach my son his year group for rugby at the local rugby club. And my son decided he wanted to stop that, which was totally fine because he has a bunch of other activities. And that was totally fine, but I stopped the coaching. I didn't really think much of it. And then kind of noticed there was that gap in, that community and volunteering space, which I hadn't really acknowledged until you brought it up. And I thought, oh yeah, that is actually a gap. That is something actually I need to go and fill, or find another way to fill. And I think that was really eye-opening to me, because I hadn't really given it the thought that it probably merited. And I think sort of seeing it on that list and understanding it more was really eye-opening for me.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing those examples. I will open it up to questions in a second. So if you have any burning questions, please just raise a hand. But really, to summarize, our society glorifies busyness. And, whenever you talk to someone, how are you doing? Oh, I'm so busy. It's this hustle culture. And actually, I'm here to promote rest as a radical act of self-preservation. And rest is not a luxury. Rest is a necessity. If you scan this QR code, it will take you to a quiz on the iampausing.com website, which will help you understand in which of the 7 types of rest that you might have a deficit. And yeah, I will leave that on the screen. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Yeah, this has been, I see, Anit, you need to run. So yeah, thank you for joining. And really, in terms of next steps, as I said, we've whizzed through. This has really been a taster of what we do, work with teams. At the end of a session, these were some of the tips from the rest group, from the Lego team after the session, of how they are going to implement rest. And I Am Pausing, we offer one-on-one coaching, team well-being workshops like this one, and many others, off-sites and retreats, and we also have training programs as well. So if any of that would be of interest to you, please feel free to reach out to me. Always happy to have a chat, whether it's on the personal level or the professional. I work with people on both. And Jonny, thank you so much for sharing your experiences so openly. And I'm so grateful that you could join and take the time to talk to us about how you and the Lego Group implement rest. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. If there are any final questions, I'm going to hang around for another few minutes, so feel free to stay on the line. We'll stop the recording, and otherwise we'll share the recording afterwards as well. Thanks, AJ. Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks, Jonny.